Here we have my iPad mini running iOS 6.0.1 and my Nexus 7 running Android 4.2. The Nexus 7 feels light, but the iPad mini definitely feels lighter. The iPad mini is palmable, but not quite as palmable as the Nexus 7. It should be obvious to you by now, the Nexus 7 is far more pocketable, unless you have really big pockets. When I hold on to either device in one hand, the Nexus 7 definitely feels better balanced. And to tell you the truth, I also appreciate the grip on the back of the Nexus 7. The hardware construction on the iPad mini definitely appears to be a bit more seamless than that on the Nexus 7. So what about game performance? I just got Zenbound 2 on Android through the Humble Bundle today, so let me just show you what happens as I spin the bird around. You can definitely see dropped frames. Now let's do the same on the iPad mini. Much smoother. Alright, so what about the speakers? The Nexus 7 doesn't get very loud. And it's not a very rich sound either. The speakers on the iPad mini definitely trump. You can definitely see the text is much more crisp on the Nexus 7. Here I am inside the Google Plus application on both iOS and Android. I gotta tell you, the color saturation on both screens seems to be about the same. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to pick up on this, but the Nexus 7 definitely had some issues in displaying gradients. That wasn't empirical, it was just an observation. I've got the Facebook app open here, and you can see scrolling is relatively smooth on iOS. Android 4.2 certainly did make some improvements, but scrolling is still stuttery in a variety of applications. Even with the page, fully loaded on Google Chrome, so many missed swipes and taps. Not to mention dropped frames. Much more smooth. Google Earth performance on iPad mini isn't bad, but it isn't great either. Seems to be about the same performance on the Nexus 7. If not maybe a little better. While the iPad mini has two cameras, one on the front and one on the back, I do believe the camera on the iPad mini bests the Nexus 7's camera. I mean, the Nexus 7's camera isn't bad, it's just not as sharp as the iPad mini's. At this distance, in this light, I look like an Oompa Loompa. At this distance, in this light, not only is the frame rate better on the iPad mini, but it looks like I have a normal skin tone, if you consider white normal. In terms of navigating the OS, well, I would say that, by and large, iOS was a bit more responsive on the iPad mini compared to Android 4.2 on the Nexus 7. It still suffers from a bit of stuttering and lagging. And as far as general app optimization is concerned, iOS definitely has it over Android at this point in time for larger screens. A lot of the apps I found for Android were really designed for smaller screens, compared to the iPad mini, which was optimized for a larger screen but the same resolution. Consider the same views inside the same app on the different screens. This is Flipboard, by the way. For argument's sake, I flipped to another page. Don't get me wrong, the Nexus 7 screen is nice. It's just that you don't have as much screen real estate to view all content at any given time. My Nexus 7's battery's about to die, and I've been using the iPad mini so much that I had to borrow Diana's to finish the rest of this demo. With a window size of 979 by 1293 on the Nexus 7 through Google Chrome, we have 20 fish swimming across the screen at approximately 40 frames a second. Compare that to a 980 by 1185 window size on the iPad mini through Safari, with 20 fish pushing along at 60 frames a second. With 100 fish, the Nexus 7 drops to about 30 frames a second, and we're still right around 58 frames a second on the iPad mini. And while we're on the subject, battery life between the two devices was about the same, although the iPad mini usually could go 1 or 2 hours longer before a charge. They're right around 10 hours apiece. So which device is better? It depends. If all you have is $200 to spend, and you're looking for a tablet computer, I gotta tell you, the Nexus 7 is difficult to beat. If you're looking for overall performance and a slightly larger screen, plus an operating system that's optimized for the apps that are running on it, you're going to be better off spending a bit more money on the iPad mini. Here's the thing. They're both really good tablet computers. I'm happy to be someone who can own both, but you may have a more difficult choice ahead. Which one is really better? Well, it depends on what you really want. If you're looking for a good tablet and all you care to do is read, the Nexus 7 is going to do you just fine. If you're looking for a generally smoother experience and a comprehensive package, you probably want the iPad mini. This may even come down to a battle between Android and iOS. And yes, by the way, It's okay to have both. Do you want an outstanding budget tablet, or do you want an outstanding smaller iPad? If they were the same price, it'd be an easier comparison to make. If you already have an Android phone, you may be happier with the Nexus 7. If you already have a smaller iOS device, you're probably going to be happier with the iPad mini. If you have a family that likes sharing things, the Nexus 7 is going to make you happy with multi-user support. Then again, there's a lot more stuff for kids on iOS. So, which one will you get? And why? I hope we can all agree on one thing.